Welcome everyone. It's been a while since I have done a video, so I wanted to start with OSINT, which is one of my favorite subjects, and that is open source intelligence. Now, OSINT can be used as part of penetration testing. It can be part of risk assessments, also compliance assessments, or they can be standalone events. And the process for either white hat or black hat are pretty much the same. So open source intelligence is basically any information that you can get from the public domain on a person or a company or whatever your specific target is. What we use this information for as penetration testers or ethical hackers is looking at the digital footprint. And this can lead cyber events. You can use it for gathering information on the target so that you can use that information during your actual test. Or again, it can be a standalone event, as I mentioned before. The first thing you want to do with any event is to scope this event. So if you're going to be doing an OSINT event, then you want to clearly define what the scope is and make sure that you stay within the bounds of that scope. For instance, if you were going to do a cyber assessment and it would include social engineering and you would be doing some whaling or spearfishing with executives, then you would want to pretty much limit the scope to the individuals that you would be actually targeting during that assessment. You'll want to make sure that your tradecraft is defined again as covert or overt. In the assessment, it will take you about 1 to 2 weeks duration. Now that's not working on it 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, but you probably are going to take that amount of time to prepare for whatever the event is. If it's OSINT by itself, it may be a little bit less time, but the takeaway here is you want to do your due diligence. You can't do an OSINT and call it a full OSINT with just doing a couple of hours. And Google is not the only source that you're going to be getting information from. Again, this information is going to be fed in to design your threat models for the actual event. And also be aware there's as much misinformation out there as there is good information. Misinformation is false information, obviously, and it can either be false or inaccurate through intention or just simply because that's the way that the information is being brought up through different sources. So sometimes a person or an organization will put misinformation out into the public domain to throw off the possibility of someone doing research for just this reason. Google is going to represent I would say probably 30% of your OSINT. The official number that I use is less than 35%. Keep in mind that Google has algorithms, and these algorithms have built-in biases. So depending on where you're at, where you live, what time of day, what your browser history has been. All of these are different hooks that Google takes as part of the input and then outputs information tailored to that as well. So just keep in mind that if you think that an OSINT event is going to be just Googling information, there's a lot of good information on Google, but it is not a full OSINT event. So know the difference between the two. When you're doing the OSINT, you're going to be pulling information from a lot of different sources. And having a good methodology for your OSINT is probably the best tool that you can have to be able to quickly and efficiently run through all of these things and produce the output that you're looking for. The OSINT framework itself, there are several frameworks. We'll talk a little bit about that. There are different methodologies that you can use, and then also tools that you can use for successful hunting. The process that we use, we begin with scoping, and then we collect information. This is the field work, so to speak. We disseminate the information, and we start to draw conclusions, and we capture those conclusions in the reporting phase of the event. All information that you gather is going to be important. It is either going to be important for a Boolean, a yes, no, true, false, on, off type decision. But also there are little tidbits of information that you will find during this search that do not make any sense to you when you're doing it, but later in the testing or in the OSINT event, you're going to be able to come back to that little bit of information, and it may be the pivotal piece of information that you can plug in that will actually tell the full story or paint the full topography of what you're looking at for your target. So always make sure that you're not only collecting all that information, but you're saving that information, and it's important to be able to quickly pull that information up to correlate it so that you can make sense of one little bit of information that you wonder why this came up, and it will become apparent later on. So a couple of programs that are, in my opinion, good programs to keep this information. One is Cherry Tree. KeepNote is good. If you're a Windows person, there are some different OneNote and things like that that you could use. LibreOffice, Office 365, these are perfectly good tools. I think probably Cherry Tree and KeepNote are my favorites, and probably KeepNote depending on what the event is. One of the nice things about Cherry Tree and KeepNote is the fact that they can actually link information, making it easier to build a mind map to see exactly what you have and to see how the information correlates with other pieces of information that you've gathered. There's an open source intelligence handbook that is really good. I won't try to pronounce these names here. I don't want to botch those up, but this information that is contained in here is a real good methodology for you to use, so I encourage you to take a look at that. we'll start with the OSINT framework. The OSINT framework is shown here, and it is a HTML web-based methodology. And as you're going through each one of these nodes, you can actually click on those nodes and they open up into sub-nodes, and you can actually work your way through the entire framework right here by clicking on the different things and then recording your results. So it does make it easier to do. Now sometimes some of these things, the websites that are targets of these different hyperlinks, sometimes those may be broken, or sometimes that website does not exist anymore. So keep that in mind. But it is a good place to begin. As you're going through that, when you click on the individual links in here, they will open up and decompose into separate links. And like for our example here, if you click name check, it will actually open this website so that you can type in the information, and it will search different domains like in this example. The second one is the start.me start page, as it's called. And this has a huge list of links, and you can go through these links. You can click on each individual link, and again it does pretty much the same thing. It's just going to open up the link as you're going through. Like for instance, if you click on the OSINT dot link, then it's going to return this, and you'll be able to work your way through each one of these links as part of your due diligence. Google, as I mentioned, is a good source, especially Google Dorking. So if you have used Google Dorks in the past, you know that these are hit and miss. They are good, and if you're running through these, you may stumble on some little pieces of information that will be helpful for you. The Google Hacking Database is also good. It is direct hacks, and you can run those, and sometimes you can uncover some little bits of information from that as well. One tool that is good that kind of puts a lot of information in one place is Buskador, and you can download this as a virtual machine. It is Linux based, so you can pop a command line and go to town with it. I don't know currently if it is being maintained, but you can go and take a look at it. This screenshot was taken a little while ago, so it was at version 2.0. But you can Google this and try it as well. Once you open the tool, you'll find that all of these different things are put as menu type items, and you can just kind of work your way through there. Another virtual machine that is good to use for this is Parrot. So you can download it and kind of work your way through there. Really, any of these tools are good to use. Unfortunately, there's not a one size fits all for OSINT, so I can't really say that if you download one of these machines, it's going to include everything that you need to research. That's not the way this works. but it is a handy tool to have in your arsenal so that you can run these different searches and exhaust those possibilities, and then you'll have to go on to another tool. Mtego is a good tool to use as well. It has its fair share of limitations, but it does provide a lot of transforms. So you can use the transforms APIs, and you can actually gather information from all these different ones. So like for instance, Shodan is a transform, and you can actually set up an account on Shodan, get an API for that, and so as you're going through and you're searching for different things, it will actually reach out to that website and pull some of the information. One of the nice things about Mtego is, again, being able to take big data and trim it down or carve it out into what you're really looking for. And so it has some good graphical representations of what your, say for instance, IP addresses or domain names, and how those kind of work up into a parent-child relationship. And it goes across the entire metaverse, so to speak. So we can see here where not only is it specific to our target, but you can start to see interrelationships developing across different domains or different companies or different IP addresses as well. Another one that is okay to use is the harvester. I have mixed feelings about the harvester. It's okay. It does produce some results, but it's certainly not exhaustive. It's something that you can kind of play with and make your own decision, or your own opinion as to if you like this tool or not. NetGlove is good. It's kind of a Mtego type tool, and it does provide some pretty good visual eye candy, so that you can kind of see how these things correlate with each other out there in the metaverse. There's just no substitute for good tradecraft. I've said this before in some of my videos. What we do as penetration testers or cybersecurity assurance folks is we do our due diligence, and investigation is part of that. And so you have to investigate, search, and then start all over, or take a little bit of information and go back and work it from that direction. So again, this is not something that you can Google a couple of times and then deliver an OSINT report. You're going to be missing some information, and it may be embarrassing when you set up your presentation in the boardroom and you start presenting information that you have found out in the domain, and the CEO says, well, that's not accurate, or, well, you didn't find this, and it may be so blaringly obvious and you miss that, and obviously your credibility goes down the toilet at that point. Wikipedia has a pretty good list of social networking websites. It is maintained and updated, and so this is a pretty good place as well. I wouldn't start with this. I'm going to show you some other tools, but it is a good way that you can go and double check yourself. What did you forget, or what other sources are out there that maybe you haven't looked at? HaveABempon is a good website. If you have email addresses or you found email addresses, you can do some searches like that, and this tool is really good if you can provide some information in your report of email addresses that were within your target that have been compromised, or some of that information is for sale out on the dark web as part of another compromise of another software platform, then obviously that's good information you want to feed back. Social media has a wealth of information. I've said this before. People overshare a lot of information, and sometimes that's to their detriment. And then human intelligence. Obviously, there are some good sites out there. There are record searches. There are different ones that you can go into. There's no one size fits all for this. I mean, you can get this information from a lot of different sources. Don't forget the government sources. Those are really good, like, for instance, patents, trademarks, things like that. You can do these public record searches. They cost nothing. They're free. And sometimes you can get a lot of good information from that. As you find out who owns the patent, you start to get names, email addresses, addresses, and things like that. So it's really good information. Also, there are some other sources out there like doing vehicle identification numbers, VIN numbers for vehicles. So you can run those as well. A couple of good websites here to use. And then don't forget, dumpster diving is fantastic. It's dirty work, but somebody has to do it. When you jump into that dumpster, you may find all kinds of surprises, good and bad, but you may find some really good information in there. People don't think about what they're throwing out, and obviously trash is public domain once it is put out for collection. And I've cited here from the Florida State Attorney, and this is Florida specific, but you can actually dive through someone's trash once it's put out. You can even collect their trash and take it to another site for a little better analysis, maybe not quite as messy as well. But people don't think about the information they're putting out there. Now, one thing that I will say about this is keep in mind that if a business has dumpsters and those dumpsters are behind a chain link fence, you can't jump over the fence to go and dive in their dumpster. That's still trespassing. It's kind of obvious, but I think it needs to be said here. And then enforcement sites. You've got all kinds of different sites out there. You can learn a lot about executives through looking at some of this information. I've actually found cases in some tests that an executive had a criminal history in the past. It was 20 years ago. It may not even be relevant, but that information is out there and it's in the domain. And that could be a factor when it comes to blackmail or anything like that on that individual. So we definitely want to produce that information and then let the recipient of the report decide, is that information a risk or not. There's Geo Information. Obviously, everything in the world has geo coordination or coordinates, and you can place that in different places. There are a lot of good tools here that you can use for GPS. You can use routing tools to find out where something came from. Your banks have routing numbers, and they will give you the actual bank itself. It may not give you the actual location, but it gives you a good place to start from. And then you have radio locators. You have a website called Wiggle, and that's a good website because it shows Wi-Fi. And so sometimes as you're doing your surveillance on a target before you start, you can pop this up and you can kind of see what kind of Wi-Fi is around in the area. Don't forget the Internet of Things. So Shodan is a good website for that. IFTTT is a good site. So don't forget that. You can actually go in and take a look at that information, as well as image information, IMIT. Tiny Eye is good. Prime Eyes is a good one as well. Business Intelligence, Better Business Bureau. You can do airman searches if the person is a pilot or was a pilot. You can probably do some location there. If they have a professional license, you can search for that information as well. You can also do searches with the Exchange and or Securities and Exchange Commission done in Bradstreet, Market Visual, even Yelp gives you information because it has reviews of the business, gives you a good place to start. So let's put it all together. So we start in Cherry Tree or whatever software that you're using, and we start collecting the information. We just want to put all of that information together so that we can develop that digital footprint. That footprint is going to lead to an OSINT profile. You're going to be able to see what relationships your targets have, and then you're going to be able to test their cybersecurity posture from there. Again, this feeds in well with phishing or spear phishing or whaling or any other social engineering endeavors. Obviously, you want to start with OSINT so that you can collect as much information as you possibly can to be able to see other areas that may be attack surfaces. So I hope this information was of value to you. Leave me some questions and comments. I'll be sure to check those out. Also, you can go to my website, warrenalford.com, and I've provided a whole bunch of tools that you can use over there, as well as a nice OSINT library of links at the bottom of the page, so you can go through there. And until next time, happy hunting.